It is wrap up time, so you know what that means. Today I'm going to be talking about all the books that I read in the month of March. This month feels like it was very long. It feels like it's been a long time since I visited some of these books. I feel like I say that every month, and maybe it's just because March coming off of February is a little bit of a longer month, so it feels like a lot happened, but I'm looking at some of these books and I totally forgot that I even read them this month. So for some of these, I may not have that many intricate, in-depth thoughts to say about them, but I can remember which ones I enjoyed and which ones I didn't. And as always, we're going to be going in order from my least favorite to my most favorites. First, we'll start with the two books that I DNF'd this month. Both of the books that I DNF'd were ARCs, advanced reader copies that I was reading through NetGalley. The first one was a book called What Have We Done by Alex Finlay, and I was actually reading this in a reading blog that I did where I was doing predictions based off of the first chapter of the book to see if I could guess what my rating would be of the book in just the first chapter. And then I was reading the full book and then I was seeing how correct or not correct I was. And this ended up being a DNF, and I definitely did not predict from the first chapter that it would be a DNF, so I did not get that one correct. I'd never read from Alex Finlay before. I've been a little bit hesitant to pick up any books from Alex Finlay just because of other things that I've heard about his writing style or being problematic, and I don't know, I just didn't really know enough about him, but he keeps having books come out every single year, and I thought I might as well try to pick one up and just see if it was something that I would be interested in, and it quickly turned out to be something I was not interested in. The story is about three different characters whose perspectives you're following, and they all met each other when they were teens at this, I can't even think of the word for it now, not like an orphanage, but a foster home kind of situation that they were all in when they were teens, and something bad happened in their past. Now they're all grown up and they're adults going about their separate lives, but they all have one thing in common, and that is that someone is trying to kill them. So you follow each of the different perspectives, and it is very action-based. It feels like watching an action movie, and that's not my favorite style, and I wasn't connecting to the characters. There was only one POV that I cared about, and the other two I didn't, so I really only cared about 1/3 of the book, and I decided to put it down halfway through. Since I talked about that, other people were commenting and saying this is their least favorite of Alex Finlay's books, so maybe there's still potential for me to check out something else from Alex Finlay, but this one ended up not being for me. The second book I DNF'd this month was called We Love to Entertain by Sarah Strohmeyer. I had no idea what I was really getting myself into with this one because the description kind of confused me, but I knew it had something to do with our obsession with HGTV and that it was going to be a mystery/thriller. What the story turned out to be is there's this competition reality TV show going on that is all about renovating houses. It's called To the Manor Build, and there is a couple who is renovating a house together, and they have an assistant in the small town that they're working in, and the assistant's mom is also a part of the community, and you follow the assistant's perspective and her mom's perspective talking about what happens after that couple goes missing after their wedding day. Kind of strange setup. It was strange that those were the POVs we were following, and I just did not get into this one. I did not like the writing style of these characters. I did not like following these POVs. I wasn't hooked by the premise of it, so I only read 25% and then I decided to DNF, and I haven't heard anyone else talk about it yet, but I know this has been on a couple people's radars, so I'm interested to see for people who do end up finishing the book what they think of it, maybe if it would be worth revisiting, but I don't know. If I don't like the writing style of a book, it's hard for me to stay engaged, so I think this is just going to be a permanent DNF for me. Now we're going to go into the books that I actually did finish reading, and the first book I want to talk about is actually 4 books, and it's not that I enjoyed these the least, it's just that they're a little bit of an outlier, so I just wanted to hit on these first, and that is the next couple of books in the Spy Family manga series that I have been reading. This month I read volumes 6, 7, 8, and 9, and obviously these are a series, and so I don't have a lot to say about 6, 7, 8, and 9 at this point because I don't want to spoil anything that's going on for anybody, and also these are just really quick, fun little mangas, so there's not a lot to say about each individual volume, but I will say as a whole, I'm still really enjoying these stories. Some volumes I enjoy a lot better than others, but I've never had one that was like less than a 3-star for me. I always at least enjoy the stories. I think my favorite one out of this set of books that I was reading was maybe volume 8, and I enjoyed volume 9 as well. There's more of an adventure that starts to happen later in the series, and I really like when the family is all on an adventure together, so I remember enjoying those quite a bit. I don't really remember feeling much about 6 or 7 in particular, and I never really have distinct feelings about any of them after some time has passed, but they're really fun to just pick up and read when I'm looking for a little bit of a palate cleanser in between reading full novels, and I'm still really enjoying the series, and now I'm all caught up, I believe, because I think volume 10 may be out in the original country, but I don't think it is out in the US. I'm not sure, but I happened to see volume 9 in my bookstore. I didn't even think this one was out, so I was surprised to even be able to get this caught up on it, and I have no idea when the next volumes are coming out. I kind of just keep picking these up as they come along. Now going into novels, my least favorite novel that I read this month is a bummer because I thought this might be a 5-star prediction for me, and that is A History of Fear by Luc Dumas. I have been really interested in this book since I first heard about it a long time ago before it was even out. I purchased it very quickly after it was published. It sat on my shelves for a while, and I was very excited to finally get to it because I really felt like this might be a book that blew me away and could have been a favorite of the year, but it unfortunately was not that. This book was also featured in that reading vlog I did where I predicted my ratings for books based on the first chapter, so you can see my full thoughts and experience in that vlog. But the moral of the story for why I did not enjoy this book is because of the writing style of it, which seems to be kind of a trend for a couple of the books that I did not enjoy this month. It had more to do with the writing style than anything else. I liked the concept of this one. What you're following is this graduate student who is in London, I think, and he ends up murdering someone, and he claims that the devil made him do it. And what you're reading in this book is that guy's journal entries that help build the story to what happened to him to lead him to this place to murder someone and to claim that the devil made him do it. And it kind of teeters on this line of, is there something supernatural going on, or is there a real life explanation? Is this a psychological issue that's happening, or is it a supernatural paranormal kind of experience that this guy is having? I love that concept. I love that setup. This book was even blurbed by Paul Tremblay, and he said it was a disorienting, creepy, paranoia-inducing reimagining of The Devil Made Me Do It tale. And seeing Paul Tremblay vouch for this book made me also really feel like I would love it because I love Paul Tremblay's style. This sounded like something Paul Tremblay would do, and honestly, I wish Paul Tremblay would have written this story because I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more with his writing style than I did with this one. I did like the writing style at the beginning of it, but after a while it was just so dense and took so long to read that it really pulled me out of the story. It was overly wordy, and I really wanted more plot to be developed versus just reading all this intricate writing that I was reading. If you're looking for a book to really soak into, if you're someone who likes to annotate your books, maybe this would be more up your alley. And I typically like books that are more well written as well, but this one was just a little bit overwritten for my personal taste, and so I ended up not really enjoying it, which was pretty disappointing. The next stack of books I have to talk about are all like mid enjoyment level. I thought all of these books were good, they just weren't great for me, and they're not really in any particular order. First up, we have Hex by Jenny Fagan. This is a story that my friend Hannah from Hannah's Recent Reads so kindly sent me. She read this in February. Is that when it was, or was it the beginning of March? Time is such an illusion. She read it recently and she loved it, and she told me that she thought I would really enjoy it as well, and then she sent it to me, which was so kind. Thank you so much, Hannah. And I did enjoy this book, not quite as much as Hannah did, but I did think it was really well done as well. It's a really interesting fantasy type of book, and it's very, very short. So this is like a read it all in one sitting type of book. So if you have a read-a-thon coming up soon, or if you're just looking for some quick books to get through, maybe to hit your reading goal, this is a good short little book that I would definitely recommend. This is set in the 1500s-ish time, and you are following a woman who is in a prison cell who is going to be executed because she is being accused of being a witch. And then she receives this visitor, this woman named Iris, who claims that she is from the future. And it's kind of like a fantasy mythical appearance that Iris is coming to her through, and they're having these conversations just about, from Iris in the future, which is more of our present time, what it's like to be a woman and how you still are getting convicted of all these things, compared to the experience that this woman is having because people are accusing her of being a witch. So it's like a fantasy, feminist, quick little type of novella. It also has more lush prose. I did read a lot of that this month somehow, and this one, I enjoyed the writing style of this more, probably because it's so brief that you didn't get lost in it. You know, it's like still moving along pretty quickly, and there's some really beautiful lines in here. This would also be a great one if you like to annotate your books, and I do definitely recommend it. Another Lush book that I read was The Last Tale of the Flower Bride by Roshani Chokshi. This was my book club pick for the month for my membership book club. If you ever want to join along, I always have that link down below, or you can click the join button down below, which I think is by the subscribe button for my channel. And if you join at the highest tier, you can be a part of that membership book club where we have a book selection each month that we read together, and we do a live show. We also have reading sprints throughout the month. There's a Discord, there's a lot of other things. You can check that out in the description. And this was a little bit of a outside of the comfort zone type of pick for the month. I typically pick a theme each month and let my members vote on which book they're more interested in. And the theme for March was like horror with a blend of fantasy in it. So it was between this or Our Share of Night by Mariana Enriquez. And this is the one that won. And it was even more fantasy than I expected. It's described as a gothic fantasy, and it definitely was exactly that. It was a gothic fantasy. And I just had this hope in the back of my mind that it would take a darker twist and kind of lean into some elements of horror. And it did have darker elements to it, but it wasn't quite as dark as I wanted. I ended up feeling exactly like in the middle about this book. I think it had a lot of potential. I just felt like there were other things I wanted to see it do. I wanted it to lean more into different elements of it. And that was probably just a personal preference thing because this is a little bit outside of my comfort zone of what I typically read. And I feel like if you are a fantasy reader who likes gothic stuff, you're probably gonna like this even more than I did. I was just wanting something a little more dark. The story is described as a gender-bent Bluebeard retelling, which in my conversation with my members, we did not fully agree like that was the best description. There's certainly elements of that story that come into this, but that might set you up with a little bit of different expectations for what the story is. So I would just check out the synopsis, and if that sounds interesting to you, then I would recommend picking it up. What the story is about is you get two perspectives in the book. One is this guy named the bridegroom who remains unnamed through the entire story, and he ends up meeting this woman named Indigo, and he is just enamored by her. She is like described as this mythical creature almost, and he just becomes completely obsessed with her. They fall in love and they get married. And when they meet, she tells him that he has to agree to never go digging into her past if they're going to be in love, and he's like, cool, fine by me, I agree to that. But then a little bit later, after they've been married for a while, her aunt has fallen ill. Her aunt is the one who raised her, and they are returning back to that house where she was raised in with her aunt, which is called the House of Dreams, so that she can go see her aunt before she dies. And when they go there, that is when the bridegroom starts to get a chance to dig into her past and get to learn a little bit more about her, and that could potentially unravel their marriage. The other point of view that you get in this story is from this girl Azur, who was Indigo's best friend when they were children, and at this point you know something has happened to Azur. She is no longer with us. She is missing. We don't know where she is or what has happened to her. And you're getting Azur's story of what happened between her and Indigo. So you're trying to kind of piece it together by reading Azur's story and also seeing the bridegroom who's trying to piece it together as well. I talked a lot about all of my thoughts about this book, super in depth in the members book club discussion. And if you join my membership at any time, those are all saved together in a playlist. So you could go back and watch those too if you're interested in catching up on my thoughts. So I'll just say really briefly, the writing style was too much for me. It was very purple prose, very lush writing, and I did like it at first, but throughout the story I was like, I just need to know the plot. I don't need to hear all of these descriptions. But if you're someone who really likes fantasy, to be immersed in a world, to annotate, then I think you would enjoy that better. And then just generally I wanted more things to be explored more and for the theme to come to light a little bit more. It definitely does reveal itself through the story, but I just wanted it to lean into certain elements a little bit more. Next up is another book that I originally thought would be a 5-star for me, and then it ended up just not quite being that for me, and that is Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. I've been super excited to read this book for a long time. I even went out of my way to buy the UK edition because I prefer the UK cover to the American cover, but the book didn't quite hit me the way that I wanted it to. This is a story about these two wives, and one of them previously went on this undersea mission where it was only supposed to last for a brief amount of time, but something happened and it ended up lasting a lot longer, and she even almost died in that experience. But now she has come back and she is still traumatized from that experience, and her wife are trying to restore their relationship and get back to normal life together. And you follow both of the wives' perspectives of what it's like to come back from that traumatic experience and what it's like to be the partner of someone who has had a traumatic experience and you're trying to just get back to normal life again. This one was really beautifully written and not over the top, so this is the type of really great writing that I do enjoy, where I did not think it was too much. I think the writing was wonderful. The tone is so strong in this one. This book feels so melancholy the whole time. You really feel the sorrow that both of these partners are going through. And it also feels a little bit mythical as well, and not too much in a way that you're like, what's going on? I don't understand the story, but just enough where it's like, is there something weird happening at the same time? Or is this sort of like a metaphor that's being explored? I walked away from this book with my own set of theories of what I think was happening. I think you could walk away from the story with a couple different interpretations of it. I think it'd be good for a book club discussion for that reason too. There's a lot that you could unpack about this, but ultimately it's a story about trauma and grief and love, and it was just a really beautiful story. Unfortunately though, it did not like stab a knife through my heart the way that I wanted it to, and what I thought I was going to get out of this book just wasn't exactly what I did get out of it. It is in this section though, so I did think it was good, but it just wasn't like my top favorite books of all time, which is a pedestal that I put it on in my mind, and it just didn't quite reach that, but it still was good. So if it's a book that you've been interested in, I would still recommend picking it up. And lastly in this section, we have The Drift by CJ Tudor. I love CJ Tudor, so I was excited to read this book no matter what, but I was also reading it this month with my friend Elizabeth from the channel Reading Riley. And at this point in time that Ashley you're talking to right now, I have not had this book club discussion yet, but I will be having it in a couple of hours. And by the time you are seeing this video, that live discussion will be available. So I'll have that link down below so you can go check that out if you missed it. If you want to hear what me and Elizabeth discuss, I'm sure it's going to be a really fun discussion. But I didn't love the book. And I was so sad that I didn't love the book. I wanted to love the book so bad because I love CJ Tudor, and I was just really excited about this one, and it leaning into some apocalyptic style writing. Also this like snowy cover, the snowy atmosphere. I was just really, really rooting for it. And when I started reading it too, I could tell that it was going to be like a survival thriller, and I love survival thrillers, and so I really wanted to love this book. But unfortunately, it just didn't go there for me. The premise of this story is you are following 3 different character perspectives, and they are all in dangerous circumstances. You have this woman named Hannah who wakes up and she is on a bus that has been crashed, or like a coach, but I mean a bus I think is what it is. You have a woman named Megan who is on a ski lift thing, cable car. She's on a cable car and she wakes up the cable car and it's been stopped on the wires. And then you have a guy named Carter who is staying at this place called The Retreat, and the power keeps going out and it seems like it may be a dangerous situation. And all of them are in the same context of this apocalypse that has happened. And you're trying to figure out, one, if they're all going to make it in their situations, but also what is the connection between all of them and what is the greater story that this book is trying to tell. Loved it at the beginning, really thought it had a lot of potential. The middle part started to get kind of boring for me. It just felt like the same thing over and over again in all of these perspectives. And then by the end, I just didn't feel like I got that impact of how the stories connect. I didn't love what it was doing. So I ended up still enjoying it. I'm really glad I read it, of course, because I love CJ Tudor, and I'm still going to keep reading anything that CJ Tudor is putting out. And I'm really glad that I read it with Elizabeth too, because I think it's going to be really fun just to unpack everything and have this full discussion on the book, which, like I said, will be linked down below if you want to hear more full thoughts. And I'm excited to see what she thought of the book because I do not know yet. So I'm very interested to see if she liked it, if she felt similar to me, or maybe she didn't like it even worse than I did not like it. So that'll be really interesting to see, but yeah, unfortunately a little bit disappointing. Now from this point through the rest of the video are all books that I really enjoyed and am very excited to talk about. The first one is Lakewood by Megan Giddings, and I'm so sad that I put this book off for so long because I've heard so many not great things about it that I just put it off and put it off and put it off. And I even read a different book from Megan Giddings first. I read The Women Could Fly and I really enjoyed that one, so I was like, it is time to pick up Lakewood and just see what it's all about. I know I've loved a book from this author before. Even though people didn't have the greatest experience with this, maybe I will. And I did. I really enjoyed this story. You're following a woman named Lena in this story, and her grandmother dies, and her grandmother was kind of taking care of her and her mom throughout their lives. And so now Lena is going to have to drop out of college and get a job to have some income to be able to support her mother. Her mother has a variety of health conditions, so she's not able to work and support herself. And so Lena is being put in that situation to try to figure out how to help support her mother and herself. She ends up finding this opportunity to participate in these research studies that seems like it will be a very lucrative opportunity. And so she starts to explore that, and then she gets pulled into it rather quickly. And you're following her experience while she is in this town called Lakewood undergoing these research studies and medical trials. It's also important to mention that Lena is a Black woman, and many of the people that are in this program are also from minority groups. And the premise of what this story is trying to tell is talking about how Black women and other minority groups are treated in the name of science, and it is horrifying. This is a horror book, and I feel like what I've heard people say about it is that it didn't feel like a horror book, or it didn't feel like a lot happened, but it's really more about kind of like a slice of life of this truly, absolutely horrifying experience, because you are with Lena so closely through this experience. You are put in her head. You only know as much as she knows about what is going on. When she's disoriented, you are disoriented, and it just really creates this super immersive experience of just feeling like you are in a total nightmare. I thought it was so effective. The writing was so well done. This is now the second book I've read and loved from Megan Giddings, so she's like making her way up to favorite author territory for me. I'm super excited to see what she does next, and I would just recommend, if this is something that has been on your radar, or maybe it used to be but you didn't hear the best reviews of it so you didn't pick it up, I would say go back and give it another chance, because I think that it was super well done, and I feel like it's the type of psychological horror that reminds me of like Ian Reid's type of writing. Like, it really reminds me of We Spread and the type of experience that you have with that character in that book. So also, if you like that and you're looking for more psychological horror like that has a real life story to tell about real life horrors, I would highly recommend picking this one up. Next up is a book from another author who is making their way into favorite author territory with me, and that is The Soulmate by Sally Hepworth. This is also the second book that I've read from Sally Hepworth, and both have been just like a solid 4-star for me. They're not the most wonderful, surprising, twisty type of thrillers out there. They are more like a literary suspense type of story where you're following people in domestic situations. At least the 2 books that I've read from her so far are that, but they're absolute page turners. I just get so immersed in her stories. I love her characters. I always want to know what's going to happen next and how the story is going to resolve itself. It's really like her writing style. I really like everything about her books. They're just a really fun time. In this story, you are following this couple who lives at this house that is at a cliff. People will often go to that cliff to try to take their own lives, but because the couple lives right there, the husband can see out the window when people come and will typically go out there and talk to them, try to talk them off the ledge, and is known for being able to talk people back a lot of the time. Except for one time, a woman goes out there, he goes out to talk to her, and she ends up jumping, except maybe she didn't jump after all, because it turns out that the husband actually has a connection to this woman, and then the wife starts to get really skeptical about wondering if she really knows her husband and wondering what happened in that situation. I also read this book in the reading vlog I did where I predicted my ratings based off of the first chapter, so you can check out my full experience with this book in that vlog, which I will have linked down below. But there's really not much more to say about it other than that I had a really good time. I just really love Sally Hepworth's writing style. I just love her stories. They kind of feel like something that if it were to be produced into a TV show or a movie, I feel like Reese Witherspoon would adapt these types of stories, because they're just stories about like women experiencing life and that moment in their life where something really horrible happens to them. And they're not the darkest, they're not the twistiest, they're not the most psychological, but they are just a really good time. So if you tend to like books like that, then I would definitely recommend giving Sally Hepworth a try, and I really enjoyed this one just as much as I enjoyed the other book that I've read from her, which was The Good Sister. And then I've already picked up another book from her, which is on my shelves up there somewhere, The Younger Wife, so that is the one that I plan to get to next. But I'm just really excited to have found another author I really enjoy, and I want to keep going through her backlist and then check out what she has coming out next. So if there are any other books that you've read from Sally Hepworth from her backlist that you really enjoy, definitely let me know, because I'm planning on probably getting to all of them, but if there's anything that stands out that you think I should prioritize, that would be great to know. Next up is In an Absent Dream by Shauna McGuire. This is the 4th book in the Wayward Children series. It's kind of hard for me to remember the order that they go in sometimes, or which one I'm at in the series, because I am going through this series so slowly. I started these books so long ago, and I just pick one more up every couple of months, and I feel like that's because I'm not typically a series reader, and if I don't read them all back to back to back, I kind of forget about them, or I don't feel an urge to pick them up. But every time I pick up a book from the Wayward Children series, I have the best time with it. I love these stories, I love this writing, and I'm so glad that I'm reading them at a point where I still have so many to go. Like, there's already so many more in the series that are already out, so I'm in no shortage of having to wait for another one to come out, and they're just all so good. This is the 4th book in a series, but it could also be read as a standalone. Some of them work better as standalones than others, and this one definitely could be read as a standalone. What the series is about in general is these children who travel to different worlds through portals Sometimes they come back to our world, sometimes they don't, and all the different worlds have different sets of rules or lack of logic. And so there's just this really cool exploration of all these different types of worlds and circumstances. But these stories are very grounded in the human experience. They have a lot of heart to them. These characters have a lot of heart. You really get to know the characters that you're following, even though they're such short little novellas. So much is packed within them, and I just love them. I think they're so great. This is definitely a standout in the series for me. So far, my favorites have been the second book, Down Among the Sticks and Bones, and this one, which is In an Absent Dream, the fourth book. I don't know which one I like better because they're both so good. Maybe Down Among the Sticks and Bones I like a little bit better, but this one was like neck and neck right there. It's so good. You're following a girl named Lundy in this one, and she is not in the best situation at home. She ends up traveling to a portal world, and the place that she goes is called the Goblin Market. And this world is so interesting. The set of rules they have here is very cool, and just the atmosphere of the world is very cool. And I don't want to tell you too much more beyond that because it's so short that I want you to be able to have the full experience with it. But I feel like if you are interested in the series and you haven't read them yet, and if for some reason the first one doesn't sound interesting to you, I think the first one's a great place to start, Every Heart a Doorway, because it's the first in the series. So of course it's a good place to start. And it has like a murder mystery element in it too. So if you're like, those are fantasy, I don't know if they'll be my thing, I think you're gonna like them either way. But if for some reason like the first book isn't really intriguing you, the second book could also kind of be read as a standalone, but it does feature characters from the first book, and it actually takes place before the first book happens, but I think it makes sense to read the first book and then the second book. The third one is also featuring other characters, but this one could be a good entry point, and it's one of my favorites. So if for some reason this one sounds more interesting to you than the first book does, then I would say give it a try, pick it up. They're super quick to read. They're very much like read in 1 or 2 sittings types of stories, and I promise you they're just so good. And the last book I have to talk about, I am so excited to talk about. This is definitely like top 10 favorites of the year. It's already on the list. I don't see it getting booted out. I had so much fun with this book, and I'm so excited that I did because I was nervous for it. I knew it was gonna be a hit or a miss, and it was a big hit, and that is The Last Word by Taylor Adams. This is the same author of one of my favorite thrillers of all time, No Exit, and that has always been one of my favorite thrillers of all time, and I never read anything else from Taylor Adams at this point. I know he came out with another book, Hairpin Bridge, but I didn't hear the best reviews for it, so I didn't pick it up, and I don't want to compare this to No Exit in my mind. I want to allow each book to kind of stand for itself for an author, and it's especially hard when there's a book that you love so much from them, and you're like, will anything ever live up to that, or will it all be downhill from there? No, this lived up to it. If you liked No Exit, you're gonna really like this. This was an advanced copy that the publisher so kindly sent me, and I was so excited to get it. I put every reading plan aside. I said, I'm reading this right now. I need to read this book and know if I'm gonna love it or not. The setup of this story is that you're following this woman named Emma who is staying at this beach house with her dog. She is house sitting, but she also has some kind of mysterious past. She's coping from something. You don't really know what. Seems like she's running away from something. There's more to uncover about her. But all you know right now is she's staying at this beach house, and there's really no one else there because it's the off season, but she does have one neighbor who's kind of nearby, and they do this really funny thing where they both have these like telescopes and whiteboards, so they play hangman with each other and kind of communicate with the whiteboards. But otherwise, she is very sad right now. She is keeping to herself. She's also reading a lot of books because that is a great escape for her. And she reads this one book, and it was awful. She thought this book sucked super hard, and so she goes and she writes a 1-star review for the book, as you know, most people would. And then the author comments back to her and wants her to take down the review, and they go back and forth a little bit. And then other suspicious things start happening. She feels like someone is watching her, and she wonders if it could be the author seeking out revenge. This was so good. If you love a fun thriller, if you love a page turner, if you love a ridiculous, over-the-top style book, if you love something that's a little bit cheesy, a little bit campy, but it's just a really good time, definitely pick up this book. It's coming out this month. I don't know the exact date. I'll put it up on the screen. But oh my gosh, it was so good. I already want to read it again. It just had all of the best elements. There was isolation. There was this fear of, is someone watching you? I don't want to give every element away, but like so many things that I loved. It's psychological. There's twists. There's secrets. You don't know who you can trust. I just loved everything about this book. I think it was great. And now I will be going back and reading Hairpin Bridge because I just put it off because I heard bad reviews, and it's been on my shelves forever since it came out, and now I'm gonna read it because this happened with Lakewood too. I put off reading Lakewood because I heard bad reviews, even though I've read books I really enjoyed from the author and then I loved it. And then the same thing's happening with this. So I'm definitely gonna be picking up Hairpin Bridge at some point, but either way, I'm just so glad that I enjoyed this book and that it lived up to all of my expectations. And I hope more people pick it up and I hope more people enjoy it and have a really good time with it. So that is it for all the books that I read in March. Let me know down in the comments below what you think about any of these books, if you've read them as well, or let me know if I convinced you to pick any of these books up. Also, don't forget to go check out everything that will be linked down below, which includes reading vlogs that I mentioned or book club discussions that I mentioned and a whole bunch of other stuff that is always linked down there. But that is it for me. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye!